Lately, I've been giving a couple of workshops on something that I call force fields. It's a new modality and it has interesting connection to constellation work, which is relatively well known, especially, of course, family constellations, and somewhat less, but also pretty well known, organizational constellations. And I think working with force fields has influenced the way I work with constellations also. Now, in the kind of sessions I do that are usually meant to be healing, but they can also be important in taking a next step, developing yourself, becoming more aware, even possibly more wise, more competent, but certainly more aware. The basic idea of force fields is that instead of working with images and emotions, we work with the impression of forces. That is very strange. So a force may be you feel sucked, or you feel pressed, or you feel pressed from two sides, or are pressed to go forward, or you are pressed to go step back. So we ask the client, we may ask you to experience forces, pushing forces, sucking forces, linear forces, whirling forces. And interestingly enough, people get important insights, and maybe even more important, they get important changes. So their mind changes, but how they basically feel about a subject, in the end, how they feel about their own life may change. Now, if you experience forces, it doesn't mean that you do not experience thoughts or that you don't experience emotions, but it's an extra aspect of experience itself that is enriching and sometimes solving problems that apparently cannot be solved or are not solved anyway in any other way. There are things in our life that help us, and there are things in our life that hinder us. Those things may be conditions, situations, it may be people, it may be our own thoughts. And everything that hinders us or helps us can be experienced as force. A force that is making it almost impossible to go ahead, or a weight, or a kind of whirl that can be very energizing but can also be maddening. Experiencing forces adds a new taste, a new aspect of experiencing things. And the reason that we do it is not because it's new, although that's in itself interesting. It is because it is very effective in an unexpected way. Now, you can use force experiences of forces you can use with basically any problem or any challenge, every effort we have. The moment I use the word effort, we think of something physical, I mean, a force. But the interesting thing of force fields is, and therefore I call it force field and not forces, it's not our own forces, it's the forces that are surrounding us. For example, you have a problem and you cannot solve it. And one day you wake up and you see something that may give you an experience of space, of expansion. You may have experiences of being stopped in your tracks. Bam. You may have the experience of running around in circles, and that is an expression in words, but it may be an experience, almost physical. And then the question is it going counterclockwise or is it going clockwise? It's a different experience, apparently. I've had situations in which people who are in a certain problem situation, they feel a kind of whirling. And just to suggest them to stop the whirling and now turn around in the opposite direction, may give a change or a sudden sense of freedom. The way I talk about it, you will notice that this field is still rather experimental, but it's already very useful as the evaluation of participants witness. Now, if you think about constellation work, so the experience of forces, by the way, can be done without any reference to constellation work. But if you think of constellations, that is a space. But in that space, there are tendencies. So to represent the forces in a kind of constellation can be can intensify the experience, can increase the impact of the exercise. So when I work with constellations, I may add the element of force fields as a kind of extra. And when I'm working with force fields, it is possible once in a while to have a kind of representative in that field that makes it a kind of constellation. Constellations are spatial representations. Space is the fundamental element that is added in constellation work. But the experience of outside ourselves, therefore I call it force fields, that is also a spatial thing. It is too early to give a complete explanation, but I can say that combining the two things, the two ways of working, is very promising. So the very least you may experience is that it is very interesting, that it's eye-opening. And it's also possible that it may solve a problem that has been blocked for a long time. Yeah, I think that may be a good thing to summarize it. The combination of force fields and constellation work is to unblock situations. Unblock things inside you, unblock things in your life, in your world, in your work, in your career, in your family situation. I cannot guarantee that all blocks can be solved straight away, because, first of all, there is no method that solves all problems, It will always depend on you, and it may be that it's something that I have little experience in. I can guarantee you at least that it will be a very interesting experience. So I hope to see some of you in my next workshops.